Welcome everybody. Thank you so much for sharing your afternoon with me. I know that this is a super busy time of year. We all have grades to enter and studio recitals to host and presents to wrap and all kinds of things going on. So I think this is a particularly important time of year to remember some of these things that we'll be talking about today, but also I'm hoping that maybe you get, some little nuggets that you can take over to your own playing or your studios or your students. For those of you that don't know me, I am Lindsay Leach Sparks. I have been around in various capacities. So right now with the NFA, I'm coordinating the high school flute choir competition. So you might have heard from, if you have high school students, heard of me in that respect. I taught for a while at UNC Chapel Hill and also at the University of Akron. And right now I'm teaching at Valdosta State University in Georgia. And like many of us during the pandemic, I found myself maybe not with extra time, but maybe just with the desire to explore other interests. And it had been a long-standing goal of mine to get my yoga teacher certification. And it just happened that I'd had a New Year's resolution a few years prior to COVID to do it, but couldn't find anything that worked with my schedule. I couldn't get a 3-week session, at a particular time of year, or spend 8 weeks every other week in a certain place. And it just didn't really work. And I found myself, during the pandemic, in our lockdown state, able to do all these things online that I had never been able to do before. And so that was what I did. I did my 200-hour yoga teacher certification and then also an 85-hour prenatal yoga certification. So those are really kind of important little milestones for me. And, I got to check mark that box off. I also did my health coach certification as, kind of an aside. So I might throw in some nuggets with that today too. But it was one of those things that was a kind of a separate interest of mine. And I very quickly realized how much it was benefiting me in my own playing and in my students' playing. So again, like many of us, I have in the past suffered from performance injuries. And most often it's not always the flute that brings out those injuries. It's some other aspect of our life that all of a sudden it's like, oh wow, I've been hurting myself doing this for so long. So I'd like to talk about that a little bit today, about how some of these techniques are helpful in preventing performance injuries. I've found that performance anxiety, I've been able to tackle that in a very different, from a very different angle with some yoga techniques. And then also I've been able to incorporate some things just into basic warm-ups so that me and my students, I've seen kind of benefit from this, kind of from a just a daily standpoint. What can you do daily to kind of incorporate these things into what we do? So just as a little disclaimer, this isn't going to be a traditional yoga class, but obviously we're going to be, moving. And if you would like, if you have a mat, feel free, to get your mat out. I'll be using my mat. We're not going to need any other props or anything like that today. I'm going to do propless session. If you'd like to have your flute ready to give some of these some things a try after we stretch, totally fine. As with any physical practice, please listen to your body. So if you know that you have a particular, injury to your wrist, or if you get dizzy easily, if you're pregnant, if you are, have blood pressure issues, please listen to your body. We're not going to do anything crazy, but don't do anything that hurts. Just, observing is completely fine. And obviously if anything does come up, feel free to sit out. I'll give some modification options. You can always kind of jump back in whenever you're ready. Okay, so the first thing that I would like to do, I've got my notes here. I'm going to back up. Hopefully you can still hear me. And I'd like to go ahead and just hop into an easy pose. This is how I like to start my day. And of course, this, is very different for everybody. But especially when I'm coming into yoga and just trying to kind of collect my thoughts and get ready to practice and get ready to warm up for the day. You know, I have my space heater here. It's kind of hard when it's cold and you don't really want to do anything. And I like to come right into this easy pose, right? So again, you know, like my 3-year-old likes to say, it's crisscross applesauce. You can do whatever is comfortable for you. Sometimes it's easier to put your feet straight out. If you want to keep one leg bent, whatever. The goal is that we're going to start by talking about our spine. So our spine actually starts in our pelvic bowl at the base of our sit bones. So you do have 2 little bones on the bottom of your pelvis, and that's what you want to find when we're trying to get into a position where we can start aligning and stretching our spine. If you don't have a mat or want to sit on the floor, you can still do this on a chair. Totally fine. You could even do it on like a bed or a soft surface. It's harder, but it's also possible. So you want to move around until you're comfortable on your sit bones. Now, we all naturally have 4 major curves to our spine. And the bottom, I'm going to turn sideways for a minute. The bottom curve is down here, right? So if you're finding your sit bones and you're getting to the right place, your back is actually going to curve outward at the bottom here. Okay, and that's normal. That's completely natural. A lot of times when we say sit up straight, you know, we think of a perfectly straight line, and our spine really doesn't work that way. Okay, our spine is our vertebrae all kind of nicely stacked one onto another up to basically the space in between our ears. Okay, so our head kind of sits at the top of our spine. So getting your sit bones, you want to make sure that you've got that bottom curve nice and relaxed, and think about your head floating onto the top of this little chain. Okay, sometimes, and in fact, if there are any former or current students of mine here, they've heard this a million times. I like to think of a marionette puppet. So you are Pinocchio, okay, and you've got a puppeteer that's controlling a string coming right from the very tippy top of your head. And notice not this part of your head, right? So the top of your head, sometimes we, you know, tend to do this when we're relaxed. The top of your head's actually a little further back. So if you have a puppeteer holding you from the top of your head, you're sort of floating your head onto the top of your spine. And I don't have a skeleton, you know, to show you here, but if you were able to actually see the top of your spine, it would literally be directly between your ears. Okay, so imagine you could take off your jaw and look inside the very center of your head. That is really where your spine, the top of your spine, sits. Okay. So as we're here finding this curvature, you know, that's natural for us, just take a minute and think about your body and understand or acknowledge if you have any kind of details that you want to note. So for example, I'm noticing today that my left shoulder feels a little higher than my right shoulder. I don't know, maybe I was carrying a bag or something on my side, you know, that made me a little uneven, right? I'm noticing I have a little something going on in my back here on my right side. I've got a 14-month-old. I was probably holding her or something, right? So these things change daily. And that's another thing that I like to think about before I start jumping into my warm-up is, do I have anything going on today that might be, you know, a little bit pinchy, or that's something I need to watch, right? So those are those things for me, and they're going to be very different for you. So we have these 4 curves. The cool thing about yoga, what you normally do first in any yoga session, is you stretch your spine. And that stack that we just gathered, okay, we want to actually keep it nice and long and find as much length as we can. As a flutist, that's really beneficial for us. A, it works out a lot of kinks that we might be carrying tension in our back and our shoulders or our neck. And B, it gives us plenty of room to breathe. And so that's obviously very important. But anyway, let's go ahead and see if we can start kind of working out some of the spaces in our spine so that we really know, where we might be harboring tension and how we might be able to get rid of that tension. So starting at the top, let's just do a few kind of easy neck rolls. And when I say neck rolls, I don't mean, 360 all the way around. You can do that. What I like to do is isolate the different directions. And remember, we are going to be twisting and turning and basically, getting all 6 directions kind of worked out, okay, and stretched. So if you're looking straight forward and you have your marionette puppet, see if your puppeteer will drop your head so that you're just stretching the back of your neck. This might be enough for you. A lot of musicians carry tension in their necks. So keep that there. And breathe in and out just once, and then back up. One thing that we can do this right off the bat, and I'll talk about it a lot throughout, is to link our breath with our movement. So we're going to breathe in when we have a muscle that elongates, and then when we contract, we'll exhale. So I will try to kind of cue breathing in and exhaling so that it goes along with our muscle movements. But for now, breathe in, and then drop your head one more time. Exhale. Now, look to your right shoulder. So breathe in to your right, and stretch the side muscle, just that one muscle, or that muscle group, and exhale back down. And breathe in to the left, looking to the left, and then exhale and breathe. One more time each side. So inhale to the right, exhale down, inhale to the left, exhale down, and then look back up. Good. Let's see if we can start moving down our spine. So that's basically our cervical vertebrae. So now we're going to move to our thoracic vertebrae. In fact, let's stay seated just for a second, and we'll kind of go as we go. So let's take our left hand and walk your fingers out just a little ways for balance. Take your right arm up, breathe in, and then fold over and exhale. So we're stretching this whole space in here between our right hip, and keep your right hip down on the mat, and all the way up through your right fingertips. And then come back up and inhale, and exhale one more time. And then inhale and back down. Okay, now we'll try the other side. So you walk your right fingertips out just for balance. Stretch your left hand up and breathe in, elongate, and over to the right. Exhale. And then breathe in and up and exhale. Keep the left hip down and all the way back down. Good. Now, just as far as you can go, see if you can walk your hands out, but still keep your hips on the mat. So you might be able to go pretty far. If you don't do this often, you might not be able to go far at all. If you can go here, great. But what you want to do is try to hinge from your hips. So we're starting to warm up the middle part of the spine. We're going to prepare here for the next thing we've got going. That feels good. Okay, exhale and see if you can come up onto all fours. Now, if you are not on the floor, if you're on a chair, you can do this on a chair. It's going to look a little bit different, and I'll do both so that we can, kind of show you the modification for that. So what we're going to do is I'm going to turn to the side so you can see my sideways view. We're on all fours. We're going to do some cat-cow poses. These are a staple in any yoga class. Almost every single one I've ever attended, I've done cat-cow, I think. So this is a really nice way to warm up your spine, kind of going up and down. So cow we'll do first, and you want to inhale with cow. So you're going to look up, and then exhale with cat, tuck your tailbone, and then look down. So cow is inhale, and cat is exhale. And then inhale and exhale. Now, if you're doing this not on the floor, if you're doing this on a chair, let me show you on the piano bench here. On my very old piano bench. You can still do the same basic exercise. So we've all been there if you're a student and you're in a practice room and you don't really want to get down on the floor. Or if you're in a hotel, right? Similar thing. Or if you're in an airport, you just want to stretch your spine. Okay, these are things you can kind of take with you. So if you are, somewhat even, right, to the piano bench or to your chair, you can do the same thing. You might need to bend your knees a little bit for cow and then cat. Right? And so we're working through our thoracic vertebrae. And I have honestly meditated before doing 30 cat cows in a row. I mean, it can be very therapeutic for our spine to do that within, our own range of motion. Each of us has a separate range of motion. So again, don't do anything that hurts, but if it's even just a little bit, it can be very beneficial to just kind of loosen things up in there. Let's talk for a minute about shoulders, because nothing works in a vacuum in our body. We are all connected. All of our muscle groups are connected. And so warming up our spine is one thing, but then of course the shoulders are kind of an extension of that, right? And what I tell my students a lot, especially those that have hand and wrist issues in playing, that, if you can think of your arms and your hands as starting in the center of your back, right? They start way back here in your kind of right along your spine and then branch out from there. You do get a better sense of kind of bigger muscle groups that are helping to hold your instrument and move your fingers, rather than trying to put all your eggs in this basket. Right? So I think as an extension to that, musicians in general and flutists especially often carry a lot of tension in our shoulders. So if this is you, or if this is, just you want to warm up so you don't get a performance injury in your shoulders, another thing that I really like to do is thread the needle. So we just finished our cat-cow, right? We're on all fours. I'll do the right hand first, but it'll kind of be twisted, so I'll be toward you and then away from you. So what you want to do is keep your left hand grounded. If you have wrist problems, you can make a fist, okay, and do that, or you can come down to your elbow. Don't put any undue pressure on your wrist. But take your right hand and swivel up, okay? Look up, and then thread your needle under there, okay? And now take your left hand and stretch it out. So what this does is it stretches the right shoulder, and then it also stretches around here, kind of, and again, in your thoracic vertebrae. And sometimes I hold this for 2 or 3 breaths, but do for whatever is comfortable for you. And then on your next exhale, go ahead and bring your left hand back in for support and your right hand up. And you don't have to move, but just so that I am kind of facing you, I'm going to move around so we do the other side. So the right hand is in whatever modification you would like, right? You've got a couple options. Left arm pivots up. You get a nice little twist in your spine. And then thread the needle under. Rest your shoulder gently on the ground, and then right arm kind of stretches up above and reaches out. And then don't forget to breathe. Okay, on your next exhale, whenever you're ready, go ahead and bring this right arm back in for support, and then up again to all fours. If the eye of the needle was a little bit too much, You could always do this in a seated pose or a standing pose where you're just pulling, pull your arm around, kind of wrap it around yourself, and then pull it toward you. It does stretch the same muscle, but without the spinal twist. And you can do the same thing on the other side as well, right? Another thing you could do if you want to get the twist without moving the shoulders so much, because maybe you had a shoulder injury, maybe you had a rotator cuff injury, you could do a little seated twist, and it basically gives you the same spinal rotation without the shoulder part in there. So just like we had done before, where we had, one arm out and the other one comes up, this time take the one that came out. So let's say the left hand, right, we had put out for balance first. Take that to your right knee, then move your right arm up and look over your right shoulder. Okay, and you can move your right hand down just to kind of, keep it out of the way. But what you want to do is inhale here and then exhale when you're twisting. And that gives you a nice little spinal rotation. And then when you unwind, you do the other side. So the opposite side would be the right arm that had come out for balance before is now going to go to your left knee. Left arm up, you inhale, get nice and tall through your spine like we've been working on today, and then twist and exhale. And you can even inhale a little bit and then twist again, kind of like you're wringing out a dish rag. That's nice to do. And then inhale and come back around. So before we go too much further, now we've kind of warmed up our spine and found a lot of length in our sides, little spinal rotation. We found our sit bones. Before we go too much further, I'd like to address something called pranayama. Okay, pranayama is breathing, essentially. It is in yoga what we call the life force. And I should say yoga is a Sanskrit word that means to unite, means unity. And what you're uniting is your body with your mind, essentially. So a lot of us, normal human beings don't think about breathing, I don't think. I think they, go about their day and inhale and exhale, and that's just that. Flutists, we tend to obsess about breathing, obviously. We're constantly trying to get more air, and we're constantly trying to expand our lung capacity where possible and use our air very efficiently. One thing that yoga has taught me is that your lungs are a vacuum. So it's not that you can't expand a little, you can within reason. It's that the musculature around the vacuum of your organs is really what you're manipulating. And I think we forget that sometimes, we're just constantly thinking about more air, And pranayama in Sanskrit it means life force. It is the vital energy for our being, okay? And if you think about the breath that way, approach it that way musically, it is the life force for your music as well. So it becomes a little bit less obsessive, I find. This is just mentally, it's a different way of approaching breathing. One thing to consider though, beyond that, since I said we were going to talk a little bit about performance anxiety, which we'll get into in a few minutes here, I think I'm on time. One of the things that we forget about is our breathing, and in fact, when we get nervous, sometimes we feel like our breath goes to here, right? And we just don't get any power out of it. We're breathing more rapidly, or it's hard to control. And so that's something that a rhythmic pranayama, a rhythmic breath, can really help with. So before we get too far into the rest of today, I wanted to just address how to breathe in yoga. So you go to any yoga class, they'll say, okay, breathe in and breathe out, and inhale is this asana and exhale with this asana. And that's true. I mean, that's what we were just doing. But it is helpful if you can breathe in through your nose and out through your mouth. Now, when you breathe in through your nose, like I said, you're controlling the musculature around your organ sac, right? Which is the lungs. So if you can feel like you're breathing low into your belly, you don't actually get air into your belly, right? It's really just your diaphragm pushing down on your gut. But feel like you're breathing into your belly, okay, into your core, and then into the center of your chest, and then up high, right? So as you're filling this space, you fill from the bottom, and then the middle, and then the top. That also prevents us from doing that, right? From like getting a bunch of tension in our shoulders, which we just eliminated or hopefully relaxed, right? So just for a minute, put one hand on your stomach and one hand somewhere near your heart. That's going to be kind of the middle to upper end, and this is obviously the lower end. So what you want to do is breathe in through your nose, feel it down here in your gut, and then fill up in your chest. Then when you exhale, we exhale the same way. So we take our belly button and pull it toward our spine so that our gut basically comes in and pushes on the diaphragm. We get that isometric exercise that becomes support for us when we're playing. We push in so that we can kind of get all the air up from the bottom first, and then we'll feel it up in our chest to exhale. So when we inhale, we go low, middle, high, and then we exhale low, middle, high as well. Okay. A lot of explanation for breathe in and breathe out, right? So, okay, breathing in through the nose and out through the mouth. So in through the nose, and belly button to spine, out, out, out. Let's try it again. In, out, in, out. Okay, now this is a great way to set up a meditation practice. Rhythmic breathing often allows us to go kind of in for a certain number of beats and then out for more beats, hopefully twice as many beats, although it doesn't have to be. So let's think about breathing in for 4 beats and out for 6. We'll start with that. So breathe in, out, and then in for 4, out, so what I'd like to do is take this to a standing position. All the length we found in our spine, all of the breath support, the motion of the breathing, we'll do in Tadasana, which is a mountain pose. Now, when I did my training, the way that you're taught mountain pose is with your toes together and your heels apart. That's not a very flutistic way to stand. And oops, my light went out. I don't know why, but my knees don't like this pose that way, right? So I tend to do my mountain pose with my feet facing forward and something like maybe hip width distance apart. Do what's comfortable for you, obviously. If you have a continuing yoga practice and you've done this for years and you really like putting your toes together, do it, okay? If you don't, that's okay too. So we're gonna just take a really comfortable mountain pose with hands at our side, relaxed but energized, okay? There's always energy and there's always life going, right, in them. And do the same thing. Try to keep that apparatus that we just covered in a seated position up above, our hips, exactly the same as what we just did. So nice, long, lengthy spine. You've got a marionette puppet kind of holding your head up, right? And let's see if we can do our rhythmic breathing, okay? So in for 4, out for 8. Let's try, okay? Breathe in, 2, 3, 4. Breathe in. Good. So this this, again, is just something that I've done to kind of incorporate a little bit of yoga into my warm-up. If you want to put the flute with this, and you have your flute available, feel free to grab it. You could take the same approach and basically do your long tones with it. So now, unfortunately, right, flute is an asymmetrical instrument. So we might have to change our setup with our mountain pose. If you're in a true mountain pose, or if you're in the hip width distance apart, you might want to put your left foot forward a little, right foot to the side, sort of make it comfortable for flute playing, but keep all the length in your spine, okay? And all of that floating with your head on top of your spine, we want to keep that as well, so that you're bringing your flute to you, right? And this I might be overstating the obvious here. There are 3 contact points for the flute. And what you want as you're bringing the flute to you is to maintain only those 3 contact points. You don't want to feel like you're holding your flute with your right hand, right? This is a balance hand, right? You don't want to feel like you have to bring your chin forward. You see how that makes a big kink in my neck, right? We want to kind of keep all of that alignment where your ears or over your shoulders or over your hips. You want to keep all of that as natural as possible. So we do our pranayama nice and deep into our belly, and then as we're exhaling, we simply exhale into our embouchure instead of our rhythmic breath. So breathe in, and I should say instead of just playing whatever, I'm just going to do like at the beginning of the muy stella sonorite. So I think most of us know that starts on B natural, right? So B natural to A sharp. Okay, so breathe in, 2, 3, and I think I skipped a repeat, but you get the point. We don't have to do 20 minutes of long tones just right now. But the rhythmic breath can be incorporated pretty easily into a long tone exercise, so that all of that kind of relaxation and the focus on where to breathe kind of makes it into our daily practice. A couple of other poses that we could talk about while we're standing is just in our hands and our wrists. So I have experienced, unfortunately, tendonitis, like a lot of people have in their careers. And the prayer pose is actually a really good kind of intro to stretching this out, right? Remember I said that your arms and your hands, they do start from the center of your back. So we want to try to keep as much focus on the big muscles as possible, but in reality, we are going to have to use our hands, right? So if you get your prayer pose ready, and then sort of just take it a little further with your elbows up, and maybe even not thinking about raising your elbows, but just bringing your prayer down further. You get a nice little stretch in here through the carpal tunnel. And I do this every day before practicing, just to be sure that I'm kind of stretching things out. You could do this with rhythmic breath as well, just to kind of keep track of how long you're holding a pose. And then one thing that is, maybe obvious, but taught often in yoga training is to always have opposing poses, basically back to back, so that you stretch both sides or both angles of whatever you're doing. So if we stretch this way, the next one would be to come down in a little reverse prayer and stretch the backs of our hands, which we often forget about. We're usually so focused on, this kind of motion that we forget about the backs of our hands. So that's important when to stretch as well. When we talk about moving on into the next little thing here, talk about performance anxiety. That might be the next little subject we can tackle. There are a couple of things in yoga that help with performance anxiety. One of them is this rhythmic breathing. And some of the things that happen when we're nervous are they're functions of our sympathetic nervous system, right? Sympathetic nervous system is responsible for the fight and flight kind of feelings that we get when we are experiencing an adrenaline rush, and that's exactly what happens when we're nervous. We get out there on stage and we see the audience, and our lizard brain says, "Oh no, this is a situation that I need to fight or flight." And really, you don't need to do that. What we want to do is tap into our parasympathetic nervous system, which is the rest and digest. That's where we're comfortable. We've all experienced being nervous. It manifests in various ways. We sometimes get sweaty palms, or we get the chills, or we're too hot, or we're dry mouth, or rapid heartbeat, unstable breath. Those are the things that are really bad for us, right? Those are the things that I think some of these next techniques have actually helped me with the most. A couple of them, and these are all related techniques, but it's also worth talking about mindfulness at the same time. And when I'm talking about mindfulness, we will involve pranayama in mindfulness. And I think one of the most important tenets of this practice is to recognize that everybody does get nervous, and maybe not to necessarily say, okay, fine, I'm just gonna have clammy hands, so what? But to be in your body for a minute, for a moment, and recognize what's happening, and then be prepared to deal with it, be prepared to live with it, be prepared to play with it, which is, I think, another very scary thing for musicians. Like, what, you mean I have to play with clammy hands? Well, no, not necessarily. What you're going to do is recognize that you're getting clammy hands, and then try to incorporate some of these practices that will hopefully help mitigate that, so that you can give a performance without them. So the first thing to start with is something called a Sitali breath. Okay, so this is a pranayama, this is a breath that's a cooling breath. And the cooling element, here, I'll get closer to the screen so you can see what I'm doing. The cooling element is with our tongue, actually. So when our heart gets, going and pumping, our body temperature rises a little bit. And one of the best ways to kind of bring focus back and not be as preoccupied with this kind of lightheadedness that comes with too much air and the raised temperature is to do a cooling breath. So what you want to do is take your tongue and curl it like this. Now, I recognize that is probably a genetic thing, and some people might not be able to do that. I heard that it was related to flutter tonguing too. I don't know. I haven't figured that one out yet. But if you can't curl your tongue, it's not a big deal. You could, the idea is that you're going to be breathing in through the curled tongue like a straw. Okay, so instead of breathing in through the curled tongue, you could breathe in through your teeth. Yeah, that'll do it. If you have very sensitive teeth and that isn't fun to do, you could at least put your tongue kind of close to the roof of your mouth and create a little bridge where the air is going to kind of flow over the bridge, right? You could do that. And I think the curled tongue is probably the best effect, but you'll still get benefit from any of the other modifications. So getting back to my mat here, pick a pose, any pose that you like. You could do easy pose, since we've been doing that today. You could do hero's pose, which is, if I did it sideways, it's just sitting basically on your ankles, okay? Whatever's comfortable. You could sit in a dandasana, which is your feet straight out like we were talking about before. Whatever is comfortable to practice this pranayama. Okay, so just breathe in and out once. And again, nice and low, but with the curled tongue. So breathing in and out. In, out. Now, let's see if we put the rhythm to it. So breathe in for 4 and out for 8. Always down low. Low first. Okay? So breathe in, out. Breathe in, out. Breathe in, out. Good. So, so this does a couple of things. First, it does cool us down a little bit. I've definitely used this before performances just to kind of center myself again, to do the cooling breath, this nice relaxing kind of breath. And the other thing that I sort of skipped over when we were talking about our sympathetic nervous system is that your sympathetic and your parasympathetic are part of something called your autonomic nervous system. That means it's automated, okay? You have very little control over this, this effect of becoming nervous, right? This fight or flight syndrome. Our body does it naturally as a survival instinct, okay? You can practice, obviously, and prepare, and that will help mitigate a little bit of that. It's the fear of the unknown, I think, that it really kind of kicks it into overdrive for us most of the time. And so doing the whole concert in your living room, you know, like Itzhak Perlman does, you know, where you're prepared and you've practiced everything 10 times through with no mistakes, and you know, you have done your due diligence in that respect. That will obviously help. But that doesn't necessarily mean you're not going to get nervous, because you're a human being with nerves, right? With an autonomic nervous system. Some of this is just natural, and that's what happens. So in order to communicate with your sympathetic and your parasympathetic nervous system, unfortunately, we can't just say, oh, it's fine, it's just a concert, everybody wants us to do well, it's great, it's fine. I found that works very little when it comes to actually mitigating nerves. You know, don't worry, everybody's on your side. Well, it's all well and good, but again, it's automatic. You can't really just tell yourself not to be nervous and then you're going to not be nervous. The thing to consider is that you need to speak the same language as your sympathetic nervous system, and that is in your breath and your physical positioning. So if you are breathing in a very calming way, in a cooling breath maybe, or in a rhythmic way where you have a shorter breath in and then a longer breath out, that is communicating to your nervous system, to your autonomic nervous system, your sympathetic nervous system, that, hey, you know, this is not a dangerous situation that I'm going to have to fight or flight my way out of. It's just a flute concert, right? I'm just getting up to play a piece. So I can rest and digest a little bit more. It's still not going to eliminate everything, but it is going to communicate better to that sympathetic nervous system, that lizard brain part of our brain. So that's one of the things that you can do. There's another position that I often use to kind of calm myself down and, again, kind of connect with that parasympathetic nervous system, the rest and digest nervous system, and that is the legs up a wall. Now, I'm going to pull my mat closer to the wall just so that I can get my legs figured out here. If you do not have a wall, that's okay. You could do this on a chair, and I will demonstrate this on a chair in a minute. But if you do have a wall, see if you can find a space next to your wall. Okay. And what you want to do is get one hip right up to the wall. Oh, there's my timer. Okay. So get one hip right up to the wall. Okay. And then lay down next to the wall. Okay. Put your feet up and then turn. And this is the legs up the wall. It's fantastic. It's very good for getting blood from your big muscles back to your organs. Sorry, my light went off again. But anyway, the adrenaline response often sends more blood to our big muscles because we think we're going to run away. And if we put ourselves in a deliberate position where we can, physically get some of that blood back to our organs and rest in this position, you're telling your sympathetic nervous system, hey, this is not, I'm not going to be eaten by a lion. I'm just going to play a flute concert, right? So this is a really fantastic position for that. Again, I've come out of this gently. I've done this, against the wall. You can do it on a chair. Okay. So you can do the same kind of thing next to your chair, except lay down and put your feet up on the chair. Okay. Same kind of position. Really. I've done this like up against the headboard of a bed, like if I'm in a hotel or something, and I don't have a wall. That has worked for me. You can stay in that position for just a minute or 5 minutes or 10 minutes, whatever. There's my light. Okay. Whatever works for you. And just, anecdotally, this has been my position of choice if I am nervous. If I'm playing a recital or have to take an audition or something like that, I will often do this in the morning before I even, get started with my day, just to make sure that I'm kind of in the right mindset. Speaking of mindset, the last thing that I want to talk about today is that mindfulness piece. And mindfulness, like I said, is all about being in the moment, in your body, and sort of in total observation of your body. You're not trying to do anything. You're not exuding any particular force to do anything. You're just kind of here, right? And I find the hardest thing to do is to incorporate any kind of mindful meditation, to start with. It's really difficult for whatever reason to start. Once you get a practice going, it's a little bit easier. We're busy people, right? I mean, flutists, I think, are some of the busiest people I know. Certainly the busiest musicians I know. And we often forget that it's a really important piece to our mental health, but in just preparing for the day and preparing for practice or preparing for a performance. And so my suggestion is just take 1 minute, and you can time it. I'm going to time it on my watch, actually, so we can meditate for 1 minute. And what I like to do is I like to count, right? I'm going to find an easy position to be in that I like. I'm going to count my breaths. So you could do the Satali cooling breath. You could just do a regular in and out pranayama like we've been working on today, whatever works for you. I would breathe, in for 2, out for 4, or in for 4, out for 8. And just do that for 1 minute. And if you can do it for a minute every day, I think you'll probably find at the end of the week, that your focus in your practice is a lot better. Your mental sharpness is a little bit better. I know this time of year I'm grading 1 million papers and trying to, juggle a whole bunch of things, and I'm scattered all over the place. If I can just do my minute, that generally puts me kind of back on track. So it could be in the morning, it could be at night before bed, don't fall asleep while you're meditating, or it could be, anytime in the middle of the day that you really feel like you just need a reset. So what I'd like to do is find a position that you like. It could be the legs up the wall. It could be our easy pose. It could be hero's pose. I think what I would like to do is I'm going to do a child's pose. And so, child's pose is basically hero's pose, right? But you're stretched out instead of upright. So pick whatever pose you like, and I'm going to set my timer for 1 minute, and we're going to do either pranayama, the regular inhale and exhale, or the Sitali cooling breath for a minute, and find yourself for a minute. Don't think about anything else. Everything else can wait. Okay, so here we go. 1 minute. Okay, finish your last breath cycle and come back around out of your pose and come to a neutral position. Doesn't that feel better? Okay, that's my whole presentation today. Does anybody have any questions? I'll come toward the computer so I can see. I think I see some chat. Oh, where did I do the online yoga class? Let's see. I went with a yoga class that is based in New Jersey. Actually, it's the Yoga and Ayurveda Institute, and they like everybody else in early 2020 were, kind of changing modalities from in person to online, and it turned out that they had already had an existing online program that was mostly used for kind of continuing ed credits. And there is a yoga institute that is, the kind of governing body of, what constitutes a particular certification, program to be in existence and not. So, so that's what I did. I went with the one that they already had some stuff online, and then they kind of beefed it up to make it a full certification. Yeah. I do teach right now. You know what? Speaking of New Year's resolutions, that's one of mine for the following, for 2023 is to do more yoga teaching, because I have a few private clients right now, and I've had several kind of requests for classes. So I might start doing some online classes. We'll see. Okay. You're welcome. And yeah, thank you all for spending your hour with me this afternoon. Like I said, I know it's a busy time of year, so hopefully this was helpful. And if you have any questions, feel free to send me an email. I think my contact info is probably up on the NFA website, but the easiest one is just Lindsay@sparkscreative.org. That's my company name, Sparks Creative. So yeah, so feel free to ask anything you like, and thanks for being here.
Awesome, Lindsay. Thank you so much for a great class. I hope everyone learned something. I know that I did. Well, for sure. Thank you everyone for coming to this another presentation by the NFA. I hope everyone has an amazing holiday until we see each other. I hope everyone stays safe and stay warm, or I know in some places it's probably hot. Well, anyways, I hope everyone has a great rest of your day, and I will be signing off. Thank you guys.
Thanks, everybody.